Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I'm going to show you how to print graphics without gaps, because Twine has a habit of, when you print a picture, of also putting a little bit of space in between it and the next picture automatically. And sometimes that's what you want, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you want lots of little pictures to sort of join up and make a big picture. That picture might represent the environment that your character is in, for example. So you might try doing a table, a HTML table, which we've used quite a lot in this series. And you might put a picture in each cell. Unfortunately, that will also give you these gaps. The next option, you might try printing the graphics and then just having line breaks in between them. And that can have its own problem when you're dealing with quite a lot of graphics on the one line, because if the display isn't wide enough, then it won't print them all on one line. It'll just print the next one on the next line. But there's also another problem, which is that when you put in a line break, it'll put in these horizontal lines as well. But luckily, there is a way of doing it without any gaps, which is what I've done down the bottom. So that's what the different methods look like. Obviously, this is the one that I'm going to be recommending for this particular outcome, if you don't want to have any gaps. So let's have a look at the code. So we go into the program. As usual, we always start by going to details and making sure to put it to Sugarcube. We also put this code in the JavaScript so that it doesn't treat line breaks in the code as indicating a desire for line breaks on the screen. So let's have a look at the relevant code. So first of all, I've got a HTML table. So I've got the less than table greater than, and then I've got tr, td, and then I've got the image command with wall, and then slash td. If you're noticing that my voice is slightly different, by the way, I'm just getting over a cold. I'm not quite over it yet, so my voice might sound a little bit different to how it normally does. But anyway, so I've got a series of cells, and in each of those cells I've got one of the images, and that, as we saw, creates both horizontal and vertical gaps, even though there's no command in there that says there should be a horizontal or a vertical gap. So a better option, but still not good enough for our purposes, is that you have the image command, and then you just have another image command after it, and then another image command after it. In other words, you just print the graphics sort of one after the other. They're not different cells in a table. They're just printed one after the other. That will get rid of the vertical gaps, but unfortunately, when you do a line break, you'll still have those horizontal gaps. And you'll also have the problem, you won't have it here when we're dealing with three very small pictures, but if once the pictures start to be either big enough or numerous enough that they might be wider in total than any given screen, well, then you start to have problems with if there's too many to print on the screen, it'll just go to the next line, and that's of course not what you want. So here is the way you do it. You do it with divs. We've used these before. We haven't used it in quite this way. So we set up a div. We have less than div space style style equals, and then within quotes we have width, colon, 144 pixels, semicolon, height, semicolon, 144 pixels. PX means pixel. And then we have semicolon and quote and a greater than to close it off. Now, where did we get 144 pixels from? Well, I happen to know that the pictures that we're displaying are 48 pixels wide and 48 pixels high, and 3 times 48 is 144. So obviously that will be different if you're dealing with different size pictures. So you need to get that exactly right. And then at the end of the code, we have a slash div to get rid of the div. And then we have a series of image commands, but they're not these ones. They're not Twine's own format, where you have the square bracket, then IMG, and then the address and file name. They are HTML. These are HTML ones. So we go less than IMG, which of course stands for image, space style equals quote height, semicolon 48px, semicolon width, semicolon 48px. Obviously, those will be different if the numbers are different. If the size of your pictures are different. Float left. Now you might say, well, if these are exactly packed in with no room to move, if there's only enough room for exactly 3 of these pictures, why does it matter whether they're going to the left or to the right? There's no wiggle room anyway. So why would you need to put that float there? Well, yes, what you're saying makes perfect sense, but you do. When I left that out, it didn't print it quite properly. So you do have to put that in. And then we have a quote to end off that style, and then we have src, which is source. So that's the equivalent of this bit here. src equals quote art slash, and then the names of the files, which in this case is wall.png, and then the other one we're using is grass.png. Now these line breaks here are not necessary. I could have them as one big thing like that. It just made it a little bit easier to, I thought it made it a bit easier to see what was happening. And of course, if you were doing a really big picture, you probably wouldn't have handwritten image commands. You'd probably have a for loop, and then on each iteration you'd have set z equals, and it would create something like this by looking at an array where you had the environment stored or whatever you were trying to display. But you would end up with this img style command. So that is how you can do graphics without gaps. And so therefore you can do sort of tile-based displays, which a lot of computer role-playing games do use. So I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.